Serious, what is your most terrifying we need to leave, now random rush of fear you felt? I was in an Irish bar in Bangkok with my wife, and a group of 5 very muscular Asian guys came in and started to drag a white guy out. The bar owner stood up and yelled, "This does not happen here." And amazingly the 5 dudes listened and went outside to wait for this guy to leave. The owner asked the guy what's going on and he said these dudes were going to kill him. At this point the bar owner was trying to smooth things over and offered us some free beers, but I'm 99 sure this was actually an Irish mob-owned bar and we were there at the wrong time. We were definitely in a hurry to leave. Long story short, we left and never went back. A coworker of mine went there later and told me the waitress urged him to leave because there was going to be a hit there that day. September 19, 1985, and huge earthquake hit Mexico City. Hundreds of buildings collapsed, and at least 10,000 people died. Every year, the earthquake is commemorated. In 2017, 2 hours after the commemoration, I was outside a classroom with some friends, waiting for our teacher. I saw one of my friends was uneasy, and she asked me to go to a small store outside the building with her. I could notice she didn't actually want to buy anything, she just wanted to get out of the building. We were just beginning to walk to the stairs when the earthquake sirens began to sound and the building began to move. The building we were at suffered little damage, just a couple of broken windows, but many other buildings in other parts of the city collapsed and more than 200 people.
Hey guys, much like you, I love reading people's stories on Ask Reddit. Unfortunately, there's a lot of weird middle school level, just thought experiment type hypotheticals like nice try Baskin Robbins. I don't find this compelling, so that's why I've made it my mission to trawl and crawl through Ask Reddit and find the very best content and put it in your ears. That's why I'm begging you, like and subscribe. If there's anything I can do to help you out, give you the kind of content that you crave to help you get through your workday, let me know in a comment, but please like and subscribe.
That would be when my mother convinced me it was a good idea to go see a house for sale in the middle of nowhere. Guy showed us the house and then led us to the door of the basement, insisting we absolutely had to see it. From the top of the stairs I could see a bed and what looked like a semi-furnished room. He insisted we go down first, and in that moment I got this strong feeling of unease and just excused myself, turned on my heels and left, headed for the road. My mom said the guy got really upset, started to swear and sweat, and cut the visit short, so maybe my instincts were on point. Wow, I wasn't expecting all of these replies. I wanted to add, since it's been brought up more than once, that I did not leave my mom to die. I just figured out that my best chance was getting the hell out of the house and ask for help. I didn't think he'd hurt my mother, considering I was a potential witness. Also, we did report it, but I doubt the police followed up on it. A few years ago, I was an intern in a medical department and happened to be on call that night. The nurses informed me around 1 a.m. that there was a new admission to the isolation room for a 50-ish female prisoner who had pneumonia and likely tuberculosis. The isolation room was right at the end of the ward and one would have to go through double doors just to enter it. So, in addition to being a room for isolation of infectious diseases, it was also really isolated from the nearest human contact. I went in to do a clinical assessment, which involves a thorough history taking. And one of the questions I wanted to ask was if she shared her prison cell with anyone who could have passed on the infection to her. It being late at night and me being not very proficient in her native language, what I actually asked her sounded something like, "Was there anyone else in the room with you?" Right after that question escaped my lips, she smiled really widely, put her finger to her lips as though saying, "Shh," and then flicked her eyes to a spot near the window behind and above me. This horrible chill went through me and decided there and then that was enough history taking for the night and fled to the safety of the nursing station. My dad was into heavy drugs, heroin, mescaline, coke, and would binge drink. During these times, he would beat my mom senseless and threaten our lives if we cried or tried to get help. My sister and I witnessed this stuff at least twice a year until we were around 13. One night, I woke up to my dad screaming and my sister crying. He had my mom's head under his foot with a shotgun in her mouth. I was paralyzed and thought for sure I was about to see my mom die. He yelled for us to run into the woods behind our house because after he killed my mom, he was going to come out and hunt us next. I grabbed my sister and bolted out the back door of our single wide and ran to the neighbor's house. They hid us there for 3 days and never called the police. Nobody ever called the police. And my mom stayed with him until I was 18. I still have nightmares and can smell the old blood. I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible. Here is a general answer. My dad died in 2011 alone and in pain. My sister left home at 12 and I left at 16. My mom stayed till I was 18. The abuse went on all our lives and it was almost normal to us. I didn't even realize how fucked up things were till I was having my first daughter. I've been through years of therapy and proudly can say that the cycle of abuse and harm are broken. My life has been hard and nothing is perfect, but at 37, I'm the happiest and healthiest I've ever been. I have trust issues and generalized anxiety disorder as well as PTSD, but I'm alive and on meds. My wife and kids are my whole world. So, in other words, I'm okay. My mom and I have a very stressed relationship. My sister is living her best life with an awesome husband. Many years back I attended a motorcycle rally down in NC sport bikes, not cruisers. One of the days a bunch of people went and rode MX, but I elected not to. One of the guys crashed and was severely injured and was put in the hospital in a coma. Rally ends and I head home. 5 days later I got a call that he had passed away a short while ago. Shortly after that I get a call from a buddy saying he was going for a ride and asking if I wanted to go with, and I said yeah because I thought it would be good to clear my mind. So, hop on the bike and ride to my buddy's house to meet up with him and another friend, and all is good. Hang out for a short while and we start getting ready to head back out. As soon as I put on my helmet I get this bad feeling in my gut and something tells me to go home. I try and ignore it and just tell myself that is just because my buddy had passed away and I was being paranoid. We start heading out and get maybe 5 miles down the road and I'm in the middle. As we are coming up to a road again, something tells me to turn around and go home, but yet again I ignore it, but I slow down and start riding cautiously. 5 more minutes later and we are cruising down a back road and I lose sight of my one buddy because he was riding fast and I'm just cruising. I come down a hill toward a hard left-hand turn and I see people running out of a restaurant. I look forward and realize the road is covered in gravel and my buddy had already crashed and the people from the restaurant were running toward him. I then crash and go tumbling toward a road sign and telephone pole, which I luckily narrowly miss. All 3 of us crashed and the other 2 broke a leg and an ankle and I was fine. If I ever get that feeling again I'm going to listen to it. I believe had I not acknowledged it and slowed down it would have been far worse. Edit for clarity about the restaurant. When I was dating my crazy ex, we got into a fight on the highway while I was driving. When things seemed to calm down I got out of the vehicle to breath and she drove off. As I was walking down the highway, at night, I could feel an immense fear building up. I grew up in the woods, walking around every night. But this was something I never experienced before. A few minutes later I saw something run across the road, so I started walking backwards. Immediately right after that, my ex came back to pick me up. As much as I hated to get into my car with her, there was no way I was staying on that highway. It was a small animal, like a coyote. Went to a movie on Halloween when I was in high school with my boyfriend at the time. It was a huge theater where there was a staircase all the way to the top row that opened in the middle of the row so you could sit on either side of the opening. My boyfriend and I sat in the back row on one side of the opening. We were watching the movie and around 30 to 40 minutes after the movie started, a guy walked in by himself wearing a big sweater and sat on the other side of the opening. He didn't really do anything at first, but he gave me a bad feeling and I felt uncomfortable, but I continued watching the movie. I noticed the guy seemed really nervous and wasn't paying any attention to the movie. I really couldn't figure out why, but he was stressing me out big time and I just felt like we had to get the fuck out of there. I told my boyfriend that I was probably being silly but I wanted to leave. As we were leaving we informed the staff about the guy just in case. Turns out they had been looking for him as people had reported seeing a guy of that description behaving strangely in the parking lot earlier. The police came and he apparently had quite a few large hunting knives hidden under his sweatshirt. Something similar happened to me when I was 16. The guy asked for directions. I was so relieved until I realized he was jacking off and trying to get me and my 9-year-old sister to see. I grabbed her hand and told her to run. She didn't know what was going on, thank goodness. Many years ago, me and my girlfriend were walking in Amsterdam at night being wide-eyed tourists. We ended up on a street that was empty. As we walked it to get back to the busy streets, 2 men started walking behind us. They walked faster than we did, and when they started catching up they split up, so they started coming up from each side of us. At that point my whole body was just screaming GTFO, but everything happened so fast that running wasn't really an option anymore. I whispered to my girlfriend to stop as they were basically next to us. And we stopped and looked forward with straight backs. They kind of missed a beat in their walking, slowed down, but kept walking and glancing at us and each other. We stood there watching them until they were gone. Honestly, I figured, if we're getting robbed, I'd rather face it. Guess it turned into a weird act that creeped them out instead.
I turned 36 this year and I decided to focus on my physical fitness, so I bought a swim club membership. The only problem was, most of the time when I go swimming, I wind up getting an ear infection. So it turns out that normal earplugs, they kind of irritate your ear canal, they don't really work, they don't keep the water out, but there is an amazing kind of earplug. It's called Mack's Pillow Soft Silicone earplugs that, they feel great, they keep the water out 100%, they're reusable, and they don't irritate your ear canal at all, no issues. If you've ever had a severe ear infection, you don't want to experience that again. It can permanently damage your hearing if you're unlucky. So investing in these earplugs is definitely a good idea. Also, when my baby was crying later this year and I could not get to sleep, I used the same earplugs and they worked great. I was able to sleep right next to a crying baby. So be sure to click my affiliate link and purchase some of these Mack's earplugs today.
When I was a teenager, my boyfriend and I had a spot to go park and mess around. Never had any issues until this one night when the closer we got to the spot, the more sense of dread I felt. We got to the turn-in and he said he had a bad feeling. I told him I did too, so we drove past and went elsewhere. The relief we both felt driving away was like a huge weight off our shoulders. I'm pretty sure someone was waiting in the trees with bad intentions. Another time after we were married, we were going down a twisty road off deep in the woods. I was driving. He suddenly said he had a bad feeling and to just drive through and not stop for anything. He was really spooked. Seconds later, on the tightest hairpin curve, a man ran out of the woods waving his arms. I flew right past him quick as possible. Pretty sure he was going to rob us. He was laying in wait for the few cars that used that road. The curvy road is in Waterloo, South Carolina. If you are driving into Waterloo from Lawrence on 221, it's the first road to the right over the little hill into town. Treacherous road in that one spot. The curvy road, it was a stick shift I was driving. I was so nervous when the guy ran out super skeevy looking that I didn't downshift to first and chugged in second gear, and I felt like we were crawling and he would catch up with us. Taking pictures of a family who wanted a fall photo shoot in a field. Hear something, look behind me, and a huge bull is pawing the ground, and when I make eye contact, it starts running towards us. I see that there is a fence between us, so I'm not as fast as I could be shooing the family to the car, until the bull gets to the fence and immediately turns away from us to run along it. I then notice that the fence ends halfway up the field, and that bull is mad and running pretty fast. That adrenaline rush was for real. My girlfriend and I were car camping in the woods, a nice spot by a rushing river. The evening had gone well and we turned in for the night. Some time later, I wake up needing to pee. I do my business and head back to the tent. I'm sitting on the edge of the tent taking my shoes off when I see it. A vaguely human shape suddenly jumps out in my mind and I freeze. I stare through the dark at this shape, just silhouetted by the dim starlight, wondering if I'm seeing things or if someone is creeping on us. Then the shape moves. It rises up, becoming a larger outline partially blotted by the trees. My mind screams at me. I whip into action, reaching for my knife with one hand, while zipping the tent closed for some paltry barrier between me and it. It's then that I hear a noise over the rush of the river. Hey, wait for me. Apparently my girlfriend had come out after I did and I just didn't realize it. I was throwing a football with a friend in my driveway when suddenly I got a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. I hear him say, "Did you just get a horrible feeling?" We both felt it from the woods across the street. It felt like despair and fear. The closer we got, the worse it was. We noped out real quick. Later that night we both had nightmares of being kidnapped. TLDR, a guy stalked me at work. This was by far the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. It's a bit long, but bear with me. For context, I live only a few streets away from my workplace. This guy came to my floor one day for a team meeting. Ever since then he made a point to pass my desk when walking to the kitchen, which doesn't make sense logistically as the elevator basically opens right onto the kitchen. Keep in mind, this guy is a complete stranger, nobody had ever seen him on our floor, so my work friends knew he purposely came to our floor just to see me. He would make excuses to be near me whenever I am in the kitchen, e.g. to get a glass of water whilst I am washing my dishes. He was always alone, never spoke to anyone, only watched me. This happened for about 3 months. One day he happened to be downstairs at the time I finish work. He then knew exactly what time I finish and waited downstairs for me every day. He just sat there watching, waited for us to leave, then went back up. One day I walked out with a friend. We saw him sitting downstairs, quickly walked out of the building and parted ways, assuming he would go back up now that we'd left. Boy, was I wrong. My friend walked off in the opposite direction, leaving me alone. I had crossed the road and was just about to turn to the direction of my apartment, when some higher power compelled me to turn around. The feeling that rushed over me just then, I had never felt it before. It was like a mix of all the most negative emotions in the world all swirling into one massive supercloud of fear. When people talk about the flight or fight response, this was literally the epitome of that. To this day I still cannot understand what made me turn around when I generally never do that. I was smart enough to go in a completely different direction so he wouldn't know where I live. He walked a short distance behind, crossed the road and checked to see where I was walking home to. Another male colleague happened to finish work at the same time this went down, followed him and waited to see what he was doing, stalking the stalker? He confirmed that he absolutely followed to see which direction I was going, and then went back into the building once I had walked too far ahead. He would have only need to follow me a short distance to see where I lived. This happened a few more times before I finally reported his ass and got him banned from entering all buildings associated with my company. Turns out he didn't even actually work for my company, external contractor, and shouldn't have even been in my building in the first place. My mom and I were walking our dog on a semi-secluded dried-up riverbed. For context, I was probably 7 or 8. A couple approached us, and instantly something in my gut told me that they weren't safe. The man asked some weird question like, "Is it just you and your daughter here?" And then proceeded to say that he took pictures of kids for a living and that he would love to have me model for him. I didn't wait to hear the rest of the conversation because after that I took off, and I'm ashamed to admit, left my mom and dog behind with the creepy guy. My mom was livid, saying how rude I was and how worried she was because she didn't know where I went, but the intense leave now feeling that came over me totally clouded any sort of reasoning. I remember when I was with my nanny once and we were driving down the mountain she lived on. A baby bear waltzed out onto the road and stopped to just stare at us. She hit her brakes and just sat there. It was like a good 5 minutes wait, but the cub finally moved on, but she didn't move. I asked her why and she pointed out of my side of the window because of that, and I looked over to see big ol' mama bear meandering along after the cub. Shit was terrifying, but at least we were in the car so we could make a quick getaway if we needed to. Was at a party at some friend's place in my early 20s when some random people show up. Our parties typically involved lots of booze and loud music. The strangers informed us they were having a party at their place across the street and invited everyone over. We said sure, thanks for the invite. We go over and the floor is littered with used needles all over. Noped out of there very quickly. I'll go back to just drinking, thanks. A couple years ago I snuck into an abandoned orphanage with a couple buddies. Dumb I know, but drunk college kids find dumb. Step down through a basement window onto a barrel, easy. We get down and walk through a hallway when we notice a drop of blood by our feet. After close examination of ourselves we notice none of us are bleeding. We shined our flashlight further ahead and notice the blood continues into the darkness. Nope the fuck out as fast as possible. Trespassing with someone something else injured in the basement of this building? No, thanks. I was a 13-year-old girl, camping with my best friend and her mom by a lake. My friend's mom was not the world's best mother, and allowed my friend to get drunk. I had one drink, so I was a little tipsy, but still had my wits about me. It was about 11 at night, and my very drunk friend randomly decided to go swimming, so I chased after her to keep an eye on her and make sure she didn't hurt herself. And God, I'm so glad I did. 2 men followed us out to the lake. We didn't notice until my friend and I had swam a few dozen yards into the water. The men were very drunk, stumbling with their beer bottles in hand. They were catcalling us as they waded into the water, getting closer and closer. My friend was so drunk, and wanting so badly to seem cool to these grown-up men. Drunk 13-year-olds aren't the most rational thinkers. At first, she tried to respond to their questions. But I knew something very bad would happen if we didn't get away, so I repeatedly whispered to her, "They're going to rape us. They're going to rape us. We need to leave. Now." I think that finally knocked some sense in her inebriated brain, and she agreed to swim towards the shore with me, away from the men. They called after us, asking where we were going, and my friend yelled, "Away from you." Back then, I second-guessed myself and wondered if maybe I had been a little dramatic. But now, as an adult, I realize just how much danger we were in, and am so thankful that 13-year-old me knew to trust her gut.
This year, like I said, I'm having a midlife crisis. I've started a YouTube channel and I'm on a big health kick. One thing that I found is very easy to eat, very easy to prepare, is I heat up chickpeas with chicken broth and tikka masala. And there are 2 schools of thought about how you should eat beans. Some people believe you should buy the dry beans and soak them, but I tried that and it was a disaster. So I buy canned beans every time. And if I'm opening like 2 cans a day to be on this diet, it is a massive pain in the ass if the can has this jagged metal edge, I'm worried if like little bits of metal are getting into my food, I'm going to slice up my intestines. So I found this special can opener that actually opens the can in a way that is completely safe, no metal's getting in your food, and it is 1,000 times better than any other can opener I've ever used. So if you wind up, opening a lot of cans for whatever reason, maybe you've got a cat or something, you must buy this can opener from my affiliate link.
This is a pretty common setup. The hosts lure people over for parties and have a friend rob them. The police question them and they simply deny knowing the mugger, saying that the party was open invitation to all friends and acquaintances, so they don't have a specific knowledge or remembrance of the mugger. I had a similar experience. Back in college, I went out drinking in the city center. When the bar closed, I decided to walk home alone. My bicycle was stolen and my friends didn't live near me. The walk home from the center to my house takes about 30 to 40 minutes. So drunk me is walking alone on a calm, straight road. On my left is a forest park area and on my right is the road. I just passed the roundabout when a car with loud music comes up ahead. When it is next to me, the car stops and the door to the passenger seat is thrown open. Some weird guys in the car are telling me to get in. Me in my drunk state yelled back that they should go fuck themselves. They close the door and drive further. Until I hear they're not. I hear their car going fully around the roundabout, so they're back in the direction I'm walking. I quickly jump into the forest park area and hide in the bushes. I see the same car slowly drive by where I just walked. Once I couldn't see them anymore, I jumped out of the bushes. I sometimes wonder what would have happened to me if I didn't hide in those bushes. My now husband, dating at the time, and I were at the beach in winter late at night. We had walked south a bit, and were pretty far from the main entrance to the beach, so far from people. Where we were was probably a mile, maybe more, from the closest beach entrance to the south, and maybe 14 miles from the closest entrance to the north. We were just sitting on some rocks talking when we started hearing drums coming from the south. Now keep in mind, if anybody were coming from that direction, they'd have had to have walked over a mile, and it was really late at night. We looked and saw a group of people walking, maybe 9 or 10 people, side by side, about 100 feet away. It was dark, so we couldn't see their faces, but they weren't talking and were just walking. And we could hear the drums, like slow, deep, bassy drums. Instant shivers down my spine, and we got up and practically ran towards the entrance where there were people having bonfires. We turned around when we got to the more populated area where there was light and the people had disappeared. It was terrifying. I have no clue who they were or what they were doing, but my husband and I still don't even like to talk about it. We were so spooked. To everyone saying it was probably a drum circle or Native American ritual or something, sorry, but this was something sinister. They disappeared when we turned around, and something innocent wouldn't have made us feel terrified and like we had to get out of there. We honestly thought a cult or something, but we still aren't even sure if it was something that was actually there or not. All I know is it was terrifying. My high school counselor told my PE class this story of him and a buddy backpacking through the woods for a few days. On their last day, they stopped near a waterfall to have lunch. Out of nowhere, his buddy shouts duck, and a fucking cougar jumps out of the bush at my counselor's back. Luckily he ducked, and although the cougar got its claws into his back for a second, it rolled over his back and he and his buddy had to kick the shit out of it and run. Later, when they were looking through photos, they saw the cougar in the background. It had been stalking the two of them the entire fucking trip. For any reasonable skeptics out there, I just emailed him to see if he can send me any pictures. One night when I was very young and at a bar, I got quite drunk. Some guy propositioned me to go back to his place and I was up for it. I left my car, cause he told me to just ride in since I had been drinking so much, and we went riding down the road. It was quite a ways, and I started to question him where we were going. He said it was just up the road on the river. He pulls over to the side of US 1 and points to a 2-story house on the river. It was very dark and the only light was of the moon. We walked down the dock to get to the front door. He gets in front of me and is playing with the doorknob, and as he pushes it open, he turns to me and says, "Please don't make me turn the light on and let you see how dirty my place looks." So of course, drunk and stupid, I said no problem. And probably giggled. He guides me by the hand up a set of stairs. We get to the top and he says, "I just have a mattress on the floor, I hope you don't mind." And again, drunk and stupid me just sits down on the mattress, not thinking about anything. As I sit there in the dark, I start to get my vision becoming clearer. Everything looks off. The mattress has no sheet on it and I hear a whisper in my ear, "Get out." I jumped up. I ran down the stairs. I ran out of the door and down the dock. I ran across US 1, and up to a house that was across the street. I ran up to the door and started beating on the door and screaming for help. I turn and look, and the guy is running across US 1 at me, chasing me. I start screaming more and more as now I'm afraid this house is abandoned. Right as the guy gets up about 10 feet away, the porch light turns on. The guy stops, turns around, and went back to his truck. Poor guy whose door I was beating on came out and saw me crumbled, crying on his porch. The sweet man got in his car and drove me back to the bar 20 miles away so that I could get my car. I never saw him again. I never even knew his name. But he saved my life. I know he did.
This year, like I said, I'm having a midlife crisis. I've started a YouTube channel and I'm on a big health kick. One thing that I found is very easy to eat, very easy to prepare, is I heat up chickpeas with chicken broth and tikka masala. And there are two schools of thought about how you should eat beans. Some people believe you should buy the dry beans and soak them, but I tried that and it was a disaster. So I buy canned beans every time. And if I'm opening like 2 cans a day to be on this diet, it is a massive pain in the ass if the can has this jagged metal edge. You know, I'm worried if like little bits of metal are getting into my food and going to slice up my intestines. So I found this special can opener that actually opens the can in a way that is completely safe, no metal's getting in your food, and is 1,000 times better than any other can opener I've ever used. So if you wind up, opening a lot of cans for whatever reason, maybe you've got a cat or something, you must buy this can opener from my affiliate link.